Good morning. Welcome to Budeshi Radio, a brainchild of the Public and Private Development Center, PPDC, supported by the U.S. Department of State, Bureau of International Narcotics and Law Enforcement Affairs, INL. Well, in this episode, we'll discuss enhancing the justice sector in Nigeria, and I am joined by Kenechukwu Agwu. You're welcome to the program. Kenechukwu Agwu is the Programs Manager, Access to Justice, PPDC, the Public and Private Development Center, PPDC, which is a non-governmental organization, social enterprise driven by the desire to have a more transparent and accountable government, as well as citizens empowered to actively participate in governance processes. Kenechukwu, good morning to you.
Good morning, Itohan.
Welcome.
Good morning, Abuja.
Good to have you right here. All right, now looking at this particular topic, a lot of things comes to mind. Enhancing the justice sector. A lot of people will first of all say, okay, so what exactly are the challenges? I don't want us to start with the challenges. I want you to put yourself in a particular situation. Let's say you are the Minister of Justice, for instance, okay, and seated in that high exalted office. My very first question would be, what would be your top priority to improving the justice system in Nigeria?
All right, thank you very much for that question. That shoe, like you said, is a very big shoe.
Mm-hmm. And, it is.
And as the challenge with Nigerians, once we get in there, we don't want to look down. We don't want to hear from the people who are down. But as of today, if I'm appointed the AGF, one of the things I will have topmost on my priority is to make sure that we have an effective and efficient court system where people trust the process, where I can know that if I have a challenge, if I have an issue, in a matter of weeks, if not days, I get solution. Where just trust basically will be the first thing I'll try to build. And doing that encompasses a lot of other things that can be done, because at the moment, I can tell you that Nigerians don't trust the justice system. People see me and they say, oh, I made a post the other day of having to go to a conference and present a paper on Nigeria's pretrial process, and somebody commented, we don't trust the system, stop wasting our time. And I kind of felt bad, but I had to reply to the person. I said, we are working on it, and it's
a work in progress.
Yeah, and it's a collective effort. It's not a work for just one person. I recall also during, just after the election tribunals, anybody who knew you were a lawyer would always, oh, you people have messed up the country. In fact, when I was traveling, I had to make sure there was no MBA sticker on my car, just to be sure that, nobody would
harass you.
Yeah, but that's the position we are. So if I were in that position, what I would do first is to ensure that there is trust in the system. We need to rebuild trust in the judiciary. People need to understand that the judiciary is still the last hope of the common man, and not just the hope of the big men.
All right, that's very interesting. All right, still moving on. Now, as a lawyer who has represented, so many groups, especially the marginalized persons within various communities, now, what legal reform would you advocate to ensure equal access to justice?
In terms of legal reforms, I would say we have enough laws and rules already. We have enough laws and rules. What I will push for would be an implementation, because, as we say, the devil is in the details. It's when you start implementation that you can actually say, oh, we need to reform this, we need to reform that. For example, the ACJA, which is the Administration of Criminal Justice Act, which was enacted in 2015,
that's right,
is now being talked about change. They need to change some things. There's a need for reenactment. There's a need for, because we actually started implementing those provisions in the ACJA. If we did not implement them, for instance, from 2015, the last state to domesticate that law was Borno State, and that happened sometime in August last year. So you can imagine, from 2015, it took us till 2023 to get all the states to domesticate it. Now, the point where we are is monitoring the implementation by the states. if we are able to monitor it, then we can now say, oh, these are areas we need the reforms to be. But one key area I as a person, always push for, and we are pushing for at PPDC, is to make sure that there are systems that make the process faster. Delay in justice can be viewed to be a denial. And no matter how you look at it, a person's perception really matters. Even if at the end of the day you feel, so for instance, I share a story of two persons who were represented some years back. The two of them were led to go home on the same day, arrested for the same crime. But one was found innocent and one was found guilty.
How?
So what happens to the guy who has spent 5 years?
Oh my goodness.
Passing through this pre-trial process. And then he gets to judgment and they say, oh, you are innocent. Yes, there are remedies in law for that person, but a person who could not afford a lawyer for 3 years until we met him.
That's right.
What is the process of him going to enforce it via the civil means? The civil means is that you can sue for malicious prosecution and all of that, which will take another toll. And currently, we may not have lawyers who will be willing to take up those matters. So you can see that the speed in the dispensation of justice accounts for the high rate of pretrial detainees that we have in Nigeria.
That we're having in Nigeria. Anyway, it's still the Budeshi radio happening right here on Classic FM 94.3 Abuja, the station that plays every song. You know, remember, it's a brainchild of the Public and Private Development Center, supported by the U.S. Department of State Bureau of International Narcotics and Law Enforcement Affairs. Now, speaking about challenges, you mentioned that trust is a very major issue. And my question would be, how exactly do you reinforce or bring people to further trust the system? How do you make people wake up one morning and say, okay, if I am in trouble, I trust the justice system to get me out?
All right, so I'll give you an illustration. By 2003, 2004, 2005, people were scared of using China phones. Okay. Once you saw a phone made in China, it sounded like if you wanted to insult someone, then you say, yeah, made in China. Means the person is fake. But over time, today, even the best of phones that we use are made in China.
That's right.
Even some vehicles that we are using in Nigeria now are made in China. So people need to see that the system works for them to trust it. And when we talk about system that works, it includes things as little as going into the system to find out how the filing process is done. If I'm told that to get an affidavit, for instance, is 500 naira, if I get into the courtroom, does everyone charge me 500 naira for it?
Or you pay more?
Or there are people who will stop me at the gate and say, oh, I can do affidavit for. It has happened to me. I walk into some courtrooms not wearing my lawyer's robes and they rush me, oh, affidavit. I'm just like, look, I'm not here for that. Okay. So if there are things if there are still loopholes in the process, and I mean, we can't change the entire wheel at once. If not, you pull out the plugs and everything goes down. But bit by bit, for instance, taking the filing system. What we did in Kaduna, Nasarawa, and Plateau State is very instructive. When we got in there, we found that criminal case files were lumped under state cases, dumped on people's drawers, they were all over the place. Now, the chief judge of Plateau State tells us that it took at least 4 months to process a case file if you want to appeal a case. But with what we've done now, it takes 4 minutes.
Oh boy.
4 minutes.
Something 4 months was.
And it's as simple as picking those case files, scanning them into the system, and providing a system where everybody looks at the file from the system and knows exactly where to go and find those files.
Amazing.
So things as little as that are the things you do when people know that, oh, it takes me just about 4 minutes to look for my case. They're like, okay, let the matter go on. No matter how it goes, if I want to appeal, in 4 minutes I'll get my records. Now, we've also done the speech-to-text facilities to say judges should no longer be writing in longhand. This also has a recording device, which means if I don't trust what the judge has written, I can apply for the recorded version of my trial. And that will go a long way to make me trust the system. So that's what I am talking about, and that's what we are pushing for. That system should begin to work as against individuals. We've had instances where, you've had very good chief registrars who come in and bring in implementation. For instance, in the FCT judiciary now, affidavit has been digitized.
Beautiful.
And it took one chief registrar and one director of magistracy to stand up and say, no, we have to do this. But do we need to wait until we have that one person?
That would always.
Can't we set up systems where anybody who comes in flows into those systems?
All right, that's very good. I'm going to, hold you on that one as we talk about technology, because the driving force has been the incorporation of technology.
Yeah.
Now, in what ways can technology be harnessed to improve efficiency, transparency within the Nigeria legal system? And also, what is PPDC doing to speed up the process, further speed up the process? I've been in meetings where people have talked about this speech to text, putting all of this documents into a proper filing system on using the computers and the rest. What more can be done?
All right, so we talk about a scheduling system. So scheduling system helps you know, oh, this is the day your case is coming up, this is the day you're going to court. And we had instances where, for instance, the chief judge of the state, in addition to being a judge, has additional administrative responsibilities. For instance, it is their duty to assign cases to their brother judges. The chief judges are always called to Abuja for one NJC program, for one NJI program, or even PPDC, inviting them for seminars and all of that, and they come in. So that means files would have waited until the CJ is around to do that assigning. But what we've done in the 3 states is that at the click of the phone or the tablet or the laptop, the chief judge, the CJs, wherever they are, can actually assign those cases.
Oh.
So you see how much time is saved,
Yes.
how much time is shrinked. Now, because we know that change management is a thing, so we did not just move them completely from physical to digital. We have what we call the hybrid system, and that system is in a way that, look, okay, you file in your physical files. When you come to file in your cases, you file in the physical files. While the document is physically, the matters are also being uploaded on the digital servers, on the digital systems, so that at once the chief registrar already knows that this case has been filed. Once the CJ assigns it, the CR is also seeing it. Now, the attorney generals of the state now have a way to also check, oh, my lawyer is doing this, my lawyer is not doing this. So it's no longer the case where police is shouting, oh, it's the DPP,
yes.
and DPP saying, no, it's the police. We can now track to say, this is where this file is, and this is what can be done.
That's it.
So technology is, it's I'm being careful not to say it's everything, but it's really the change we need in the system. Gone are the days, and again, we are talking about globalization. We have to belong to the world.
Yes.
We are not we are not on our own. Let me tell you, most of the systems we are asking for now are things developed nations did like 10, 15 years ago.
So what is wrong with
So we are still even pushing for those ones. So we really need to catch up. And technology is the way to go.
Is the way to go.
Technology is the way to go.
It is the way to go. It's 10:16, Budeshi Radio will be back. Do join us again. Stay with us.
With support from the U.S. Department of State Bureau of International Narcotics and Law Enforcement Affairs, INL.
The one ensuring that it's easy for people to access their files, it's easy for the judges to access these files, and it's also easy for us to track where these files are going. All right, so Kenechukwu, back to you. Now, how do you think, we can create, ways where, the social issues in Nigeria can be addressed immediately? Now, when I ask that question, what comes to mind would be, how do you think traditional justice system can be integrated into the modern legal framework to ensure a more inclusive justice sector?
Yeah, the good thing now is that we have a new Mediation and Arbitration Act that was passed just last year.
Okay.
Now that act gives more room for mediation to happen, gives more room for negotiation to happen, gives more room for arbitration to happen.
Okay.
Mediators need not be lawyers.
I think we talked about that.
Arbitrators even need not be lawyers. The traditional people, the chiefs, are also involved in this whole process. And the good thing is that decisions from your mediation, decisions from your arbitration can become judgments of court. We call them consent judgments. So it has almost the same effect as going through the litigation process. So if you see that this litigation, and that's why we advise people in their daily doings, in your civil doings, not just the criminal matters now, because most criminal cases cannot be mediated.
Okay.
Most criminal cases cannot be arbitrated. You cannot, because crime is an offense against the state.
That's right.
It's not just an offense against the individual. So, but in civil matters, we now tell people, when drafting your agreements, make sure you have a mediation clause. Make sure you have an arbitration clause. Ensure that your document is crafted in a way that your dispute can be resolved easily. So for social issues, litigation may be a longer route, but ADR is greatly advocated for. Right? And then, but for what we do at PPDC at the moment, we're looking at moving into civil matters in the shortest possible time as grants allow us. But for now, we are focusing on criminal justice, because we believe that a lot of the civil issues will be resolved if we have a working criminal justice system.
That's
if we have, because a lot of the people we see who are in prisons are there for civil crimes.
True.
So someone comes and borrows money from you, is not able to pay back.
You put him
That's a civil crime. But you now go to police, or they ask you to write a petition and make it to be obtained by false pretense, which is a crime. And they now come in, arrest the person, and throw the person there. We met a woman in Lafia prisons. The woman borrowed, I think, about 800,000 naira for her business.
Okay.
She does this daily contribution, and then she didn't even borrow. People gave her money for daily savings, you know. And then somehow she lost the money. They arrested the woman and put her there. The total money she was owing plus the whatever would have come to about 1.2 million naira. The woman had been there when we met her for 3 years. She was not able to raise that. So how do you encourage small and medium businesses? If issues of life can happen to anyone, and money can fall off, these are civil cases, and we push them to criminal. So working with the criminal matters will now actually expose the dangers we have in our hands as a nation, and then it will help us see clearly what areas of reforms that are needed. Because if you don't have data, you can only be speaking English.
That's it.
You will not have anything achieved effectively.
That's right.
And at PPDC, we are very big on data. Whatever we are doing, we are trying to collect data for advocacy reforms.
All right. Now, as we begin to wrap up, I would want to find out from you. Now, how does PPDC, what effective ways does PPDC use to measure the success of the justice sector reform? Are there ways you measure? You talk about data.
Yeah.
How do you measure?
All right, so
I know that we're actually making progress.
Yeah, before now, we were just focused on measuring our indicators for our projects. But recently, we've gotten the approval of our donors and our board to conduct a justice sector assessment. And this is looking at other states outside of the states where we are working on. Now, in those other states, that assessment is going to be like a report that we are going to present to the AGF, will present to all the AGs of those states to see this is where your state ranks in justice. Okay. So currently we have our FOI ranking, which PPDC is known for. So we are looking at doing a justice ranking. Beautiful. So that there can be some sort of peer review to say, okay, in Kaduna State, for instance, that we are at this point before our project. True. Now we are at this point. Yes. This state does not have our intervention, and they are at this point, which means if we put XYZ interventions in this state, we can as well pull them. Which AGs can even now sit down and begin to ask themselves, oh, really? Why is this state performing better than my state? Exactly. There is that peer review is lacking at the moment, and that is one area where our justice sector assessment looks at trying to make sure that we get these things done. All right, thank you so much, Kenechukwu Agwu, Programs Manager, Access to Justice, PPDC. That's a public and private development center, which is a non-governmental organization and social enterprise driven by the desire to have a more transparent and accountable government, as well as citizens empowered to actively participate in governance process. Thank you so much. We looked at enhancing the justice sector in Nigeria today. Kenechukwu, your final words as we call it a day. My final words would be, don't lose hope in the nation. Don't lose hope in our judicial system. Don't lose hope in our justice system. Little drops of water, they say, make a mighty ocean. We are all involved in this. Let's get involved. Let's begin to hold our leaders accountable, and we'll see the change we desire.
All right, the message just came through, says, good morning to you, Itohan, Kenechukwu, talking about technology or technological initiatives in the criminal justice system. What is your plan for the police? Because they are the door into the judicial system. Robbie, you want to respond to that?
All right, so the police is not left out in our RPDM project. We are organizing what we call the Police Duty Solicitor Scheme, where we will have lawyers who would stay with the police officers when investigations are going on. The ACJA says anybody who is arrested is entitled to have his lawyer, any NGO, or anybody of his choice present before he makes any statement. So the issue had been, okay, whereas the Act says this, most people can't afford the services of these people. So we are providing in each of our states, we're having 10 lawyers who will be working with the police to make sure that this aspect of the law is implemented. Our belief, like you rightly said, is that the police is the entry point. If you don't shorten the entry point, no matter what you do with the exit, people will always come in. So if we are able to look at that entry point and we close it up a bit, to make sure that only people who are supposed to come into the system are the ones who come into the system, the change we desire will be seen.
Definitely will be seen. All right, that's from James Ahoa. Another one just came through. Chikutem Osai from Zuba says, good morning to your guest. The guest keeps emphasizing on trust. I hope he knows that trust in Nigerian system is not something to bank on, especially when it comes to Nigeria government and the judiciary in particular. Not trying to be pessimistic as we talk about trust in the judicial process, we should also have it at the back of our minds that it's going to be a tedious thing, both on the people and on the government officials, considering how much damage these things have done to the system. Chukute Mosai from Super.
I agree with him, and that's why we're saying we should start the process.
Yes.
Trust is built, trust is earned.
Yes,
so for instance, you also see that the people who make up the bulk of this system are Nigerians. I'm not one who always, distances the leaders from the people. The leaders came from the people.
Oh, yes.
So when the people learn to do the things right, when they get to position of leadership, they will do it right. But what we are talking about using technology is that when you remove human elements in some part of the work, a lot of the bottlenecks will be removed. And they see, oh, I no longer have any control over this. So the file comes in, pulls through the system and comes out. I have no business with it. So people now see that the system works and they begin to trust the system. So we are in the process of building. We are at the foundation level, maybe.
Also, this program is very important.
Yep.
Programs like this will further build the trust. And when they hear that these things are actually happening and it works, it further builds the trust.
I agree.
So we just have to continue. Well, he'll be back again. I think you'll be here next week, Monday.
Or someone else.
But someone from PPDC will be here as we continue to discuss issues surrounding the justice system.
I'm sure they'll be discussing gender.
Looking at gender next week.
Okay. Gender, women inclusion and all of that.
Oh, that'll be beautiful. We'll have that coming. Thank you so much, Kenechukwu Agwu, for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much.
It's still Classic FM 94.3 Abuja, the station that plays every song you know. We're back to the music now. Do stay with us. Good morning.
Welcome.